Good evening, Internet land. This is the Reparations Show.
Don't want no spare change or handout. I see that everywhere I go. Want you to reach right in your conscience, baby, and give me everything I'm owed. I'm talking about them reparations, reparations. Oh, honey, give me all my money. Reparations, reparations. Give me everything you owe. Reparations, reparations. For all them years of frustrations. This is the freaking Reparations Show.
Yes, welcome to the Reparations Show. So happy to have you here. My name is Kyra Sims, and I am your dad's best friend. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's not in a sex way. I just also happen to enjoy classic rock, history books, and steak. It's completely platonic. We did have sex one time, and for that, I do apologize. It was very good. The theme I chose for tonight's show is a look back. A look back on the week, a look back on our lives, a look back on history. I read somewhere once that we become almost completely different people about every 10 years. That little changes in experiences, outlook, relationships over that period of time can alter you that dramatically. And I believe it. When I was growing up, my mom didn't even like to sweat, and now she does half marathons. She's trying to do one in all 50 states, and she only has 2 states left, Oregon and Connecticut. I mean, can you believe it? Also, I dug up my old life journal last night. I started it in 2004, senior year in high school. And I found this post that I made around that time, 16 years ago. It was a quiz I took to see who I aligned with most politically for the 2004 election, which was my first election I got to vote in. And I aligned with Kerry by 67%. I read that and I go, no, yeah, that seems to check out from my memory. Yeah, that's fine. But then I read the caption that I wrote underneath that as an 18-year-old. I said, I don't know. Kerry's all about the right to choose, though. I completely forgot that I was still like super pro-life freshman year in college. That took me back. It blows my mind, and I definitely have changed. And I'm just glad I wasn't having any sex back then, so it all worked out. Now for a more recent look back. The New York Times posted an article recently that focused on how some people during this pandemic are adjusting to living full-time in their vacation homes. Such courageous people. And I could completely relate because I also have a second home. This next segment is dedicated to them. Let's get a clip. This experience has rekindled our love for this house. Working more than normal, and there's no downtime. I used to leave the office and go to Starbucks for a vanilla latte, or just take a walk around the block. Now if I want coffee, I have to walk through the kitchen by my son. During the school year, Dylan attended Zoom classes in the butler pantry. As owners in Long Island, we pay taxes and the schools are great here, so We will wait and see. The walls are bare, but empty is good. Less is fine with me. We weren't the people who were like, let's leave the city. But we were like, let's get a place where we could go. A safety net. There isn't a whole lot of new construction right now, so the builders were wonderfully accessible. I was born and raised in Manhattan, so at first I thought it was better to stay put. But we are so happy to be out here. Love the one you're with, as the saying goes. Godspeed, you bougie, bougie heroes. I am so excited for the performers we have lined up for you tonight. They are all a part of my theater company, the New York Neo-Futurists, which if you've never heard of us, just text your weird cousin. He's probably heard of us. First up is a video by Katie K. Chelena. I've known and worked with Katie for a few years now, and she is a force to be reckoned with. She's made of trees and soot and your favorite breakfast. I love her dearly. Thank you, Katie, for donating this video to the show. Here she is now, taking a look back on her own life and her heritage. Let's play the clip.
You might be a redneck if you've ever cut the grass and found a car. You might be a redneck if you've ever been too drunk to fish. You might be a redneck if you've used lard for lube. You might be a redneck if your grandpa grew up in a holler in Kentucky and slept on dirt floors, but I'm not a redneck. You might be a redneck if you have a tattoo that says born to bag groceries. You had to find a new favorite titty bar when you ran into your daughter at work. Your family has worked at McDonald's for 3 generations. You might be a redneck if multiple people in your family have secret passageways in their homes to rooms full of guns, but I'm not a redneck. You might be 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 a redneck if you had your first kiss outside of a Waffle House with a man 7 years older than you, but I am not a redneck. No. Rednecks left their Coke bottles full of dip spit on the back of the school bus. Rednecks had names like Trevor, Travis, Tanner, and Gopher and tormented me in middle school. But maybe I am a redneck. You see, lately I've been reading a lot about where I come from. Redneck had the opposite meaning from how we use it today. When early 20th century coal miners began organizing and building unions, red bandanas were a symbol of union solidarity. Workers saw this as a unifying symbol that transcended gender, race, immigration status, but bosses saw this as a communist uprising. Rednecks were radical progressive organizers fighting corporate oligarchs in a geographically isolated and exploited area. And what surprised me even more recently was learning that this brand of hick leftism even extends to the word hillbilly. Elizabeth Catt, who wrote this book, What You're Getting Wrong About Appalachia, says in Dolly Parton's America, my favorite podcast, one story goes that hillbilly was used as a degrading term for white folks from East Tennessee who advocated for black folks to have political power after the Civil War. So in this world full of lukewarm neoliberalism, state-sanctioned violence, and unchecked terror, yeah, I'd rather be a hillbilly. What's a redneck's last words? Watch this.
That wink at the end gives me every time. Thank you so much, Katie. I also love Dolly Parton's America. Katie and I actually really bonded over that when it was coming out. Because I'm from Tennessee, but I knew who Dolly Parton was, of course, because that's the first thing they teach you in preschool in Tennessee is D for Dolly. But there was so much on that podcast I didn't know about her. And, part of it is because Tennessee is so wide. Like I'm from Memphis, which is on the west side. And then it's like 4 hours to Nashville, like 10 hours to Knoxville. One time my mom had to go to a conference in East Tennessee and she flew. Like that's how wide it is. Anyway, enough about geography. Now it's time for our musical guest, Greg LeCon. R.I.P. Don Pardo. Greg is one of the newest neo-futurists, and he has brought so much to the company. He's brought silliness, he's brought care, and he has brought so much Black boy joy. I love him a lot. We have 2 videos from him tonight. This first one we're going to see right now is called Racist. Enjoy. Play the clip.
If you take this song seriously, you're a fucking idiot.
I'm a racist.
Like seriously. Like don't bitch at me when you hear the song. You're like,
I'm a
oh my god,
racist.
he's so offensive. Like, oh my god, like he's saying no white
It's a beautiful day to be a racist.
I shouldn't even have to fucking
Isn't
explain
America
what
the
it is.
greatest? So glad that I'm a racist. Melanin is dangerous. Fucking hate the niggers and the Indians and Asians. Also hate Latinos, they all test my fucking patience. Donald Trump's a hero and I'm in the KKK. Forefathers owned slaves way back in the day. Used to whip them while they prayed. Negroes never could escape. They won't see the light of day. White niggas on the top and we consuming all the cake. Set minorities ablaze. Torture people that we hate. This was never a discussion that was up for a debate. We gon' fire more clips in your body just in case. That's another man down. I just beat a fucking case. You can tell me that I'm privileged cause my pretty white face. But I know that I'm superior to you cause of my race. Of my race. I'm a racist.
Justifying my racism.
I'm a racist. I'm a racist. It's a beautiful day to be a racist. Isn't America the greatest? So glad that I'm a
The world should be all white, top of the world and you all tight. About to hoard all this money cause it's all for one fuck all might. First I'ma take all your neighborhoods, gonna increase what you pay for goods. Then I'ma steal your culture and I'ma make that shit look fabulous. I make the rules and stay breaking them. These bad decisions I'm making them, and I know that I won't have to pay for them. Fuck helping people, we enslaving them. We humiliating, we depraving them. Should be integrating and embracing them, but I take my pleasure in erasing them.
I'm a racist. I'm a racist. It's a beautiful day to be a racist. You should know what they. You should know. Isn't America the greatest? Think about you. So glad that I'm a racist. Think about you. You ain't nothing but a nigga. Oh, they think about you. You should know what they think about you.
I will say this, and I'll say it right to the camera, stop it.
I love that video so much. Thank you, Greg. Okay. Now, I wanted to take another look back at my teen self. I know it was a little rocky before, but I found more rocks. So do you have any stories that you boastfully told in your 20s, and then as you got into your 30s, you started to tell them with sort of a dawning horror? This is my coming of age story. I usually tell this best while drunk, but I didn't want to be drunk for the show, but it helps to just have, a little. So, but all I had in the house was brandy because I didn't have time to go to the store today. But okay. So when I was 16, I was volunteering for the opera company in Memphis, and I was a dresser for the performers, for usually the the chorus women. But for this one production, they had me be the personal dresser for this lead soprano who was amazing, and it was a great experience. And on that same production was this Mexican opera singer who was definitely like the Lothario type. And my friend Libby had a big crush on him, so we were hanging out around with him a lot. And I should note that Libby was 17, so we were about the same age. And we ended up going out with him one night with him and another opera singer. Like, even just telling it now, I'm like, oh my God, like I used to tell this all the time, like so proudly. And we went to this gay club that didn't card us. And so this was like my first time ever in a club. I'm dancing with Libby. These older men are dancing with us, and the other guy was gay, which is why we went to the gay club. But he told me and Libby that we should make out. I had never kissed anyone in my life, and I told Libby that, and she was like, "Oh, sweetie, come here." And so we made out. It's my first kiss. Then I ended up in a car with the opera singers, and Libby had to go home, and ended up at the opera singer's condo where we smoked weed. I had never done that before. And then the opera singer actually that Libby had a crush on came on to me, and I was stoned out of my mind. Just all what is happening? And he took me into a bedroom, and we start making out. And he says to me, "Do you want to fuck a V2?" Fortunately, I grew up being terrified of sex because my mom's an OBGYN. So I, even in a stoned state, said, "No." And he says, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I'm a virgin." And he says, "Do you want to stay a virgin?" I said, "Yeah." And then, I mean, lucky for me, he accepted the no, decided to come back with a counter offer, said, "Okay, do you want to just mess around with you too?" And I said, "Okay." And I remember just being kind of splayed out on this bed, fully clothed. We kind of did stuff. I wouldn't let him take off my bra, and I would not touch his penis. So looking back, I kind of feel two ways. Like, I'm definitely horrified that I was in this situation with like a 35-year-old man at 16, but also feel very lucky that he was cool with not pushing things. Anyway, yeah, the way I tell that story has really, really changed over the years. Please talk to your children about opera singers. And now it is time for the brains of this operation, Mr. Kevin R. Free.
Hello. Kyra, I'm gagging over that story. I had to pour myself a glass of wine. Please talk to your children about sex and about opera singers. I'm going to increase my light. No, I look like I'm on the sun. No, I'm going to keep it just like this. It's kind of grainy, but I kind of like it. I look better in dim light. All right. So last week we brought you 14 minutes of an interview with Rachel Chavkin. I spoke to her about her experience of being called a racist white lady. And this week, we're going to bring you the second part of that interview, where she talks about how, about rehearsal practices, and in this new piece that she's working on with her company called The Team, about how they're creating equity in the room, and also what the show is about, and it is called Reconstruction. That is their website, theteamplays.org. Go there. The front page, as soon as you click on it, they talk about their 15 commitments, their 15 rehearsal commitments. And that is how Rachel and I start this interview. Morgan, go ahead and play the clip. The 15 commitments.
Yes.
First, the team. I'd never seen your mission statement before, and the use of American history and mythology is really fascinating to me. I mean, it's fascinating to me partly because Hadestown is that, but also the mythology of how we identify in certain ways. We have been designated as certain identities. And so I'm wondering about how you're breaking down, how you're the using mythology in the rehearsal space to create work about mythology. How does that translate in the work, or is that new because of the way we are looking back on the structures that we are now trying to dismantle?
Mythology has always been there, in part because I think, as much as anything, I'm fascinated by the gap between those two things, right? Like, I think that's part of what makes America so particularly painful and perverse is the cognitive dissonance. But I am fascinated by the moments where you catch the gaps between what you say and what you do, and then obviously history is the corrective, right? And so and history told well, and history told shittily is the worst crime because it perpetuates some alternate degree of facts. But like, it's why I think revisionist history is so important.
Yeah. So then how then do we deal with the mythologies that we create in American history? I'm thinking that the question is actually, how do we use the mythology of who we are vis-a-vis American anti-Black racism, colorism, etc., to rehearse a play about that?
So the team's new work reconstruction originally started, and it has very quickly moved on from this because it was like, we don't need to spend our time there. But it started with Gone with the Wind and thinking about Gone with the Wind as a Confederate monument. And actually that idea, I wouldn't have used that language at the time, but that idea was the center of a previous work that we had made as a company in 2009. It premiered, called Architecting. And the terrible, I mean, there are many, I love so many things about Architecting, but also it was a deeply flawed work. And its original sin was it was made by a entirely white ensemble at the time, which has not been, that was the last time the team ever had a only white artist in the room. But it was unacceptable then, and it remains unacceptable now. And so now we're making this new work. It is got probably about 25 artists, about half of whom are white, about half of whom are artists of color, and of those primarily are Black identifying, either Caribbean American or African American primarily. And so we started conversations with Gone with the Wind as a Confederate monument. And then we're like, we don't fucking want to look at Gone with the Wind. And so actually now are really trying to look at this question of intimacy between a white person and a Black person, between Black people, between a Black person and a person of color, all of these different, and between someone and themselves in an anti-Black America. And this is very inspired by the Black feminist scholar Hortense Spillers, who collaborator Jillian Walker brought into the room. And I should say everyone in the team is a writer as well as a performer or a designer, composer, director. And I'm co-directing this piece with Shaylin Livingston. And Jillian brought in Hortense, and we watched this video of a lecture that Spillers gives, and it ends, the lecture is about the relationship actually between Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. And the lecture ends with Professor Spiller's leaning into the mic and saying, so without freedom, intimacy and love don't matter. Okay. And then she like walks away from the mic, and it's, I mean, Jillian's like head just like explodes as she's sharing this video with us, because it's such a extraordinary mic drop.
Yeah.
And that's where we are starting, and we're playing on, right? All you know, picture a white woman and a black woman sitting at a table together, and picture them together, both in hoop skirts and corsets, just like looking at each other. And then picture that same actress in contemporary clothes, sitting with, you know, with their fucking mugs of coffee, again, looking at each other. And already it's layered with, you know, decade after sedimentary layer of mythology and history. So there's actually very little sometimes you have to do to make the pitchfork vibrate with that. And then the question is, what exactly are you invoking? And that's for us where dialogue comes in, and also like the order, you know, the construction of images over the course of the piece.
Thank you so much for that, Kevin.
Hey, you're welcome. I forgot I was coming back to talk to you. I forgot to pour myself another glass of wine. You put your glasses on.
Oh yeah, it's for the next segment. I'll tell you why soon.
I should not be wearing my contacts so that I can actually read with my glasses. I thank you for hosting this show. You're delightful. I think you're a genius. I've thought that since the first time I saw you perform. Since the first time I saw Avant-Garde Roots, which I wish you would make a video of so that we can just put it on the show sometime.
Oh man, oh that's a great idea. I should.
I'm surprised you haven't thought of that. Interesting.
Listen,
Listen,
maybe you're my muse, Kevin Arfrey.
I will suggest all of the things that you should spend your time doing, and you may choose what to do them or not do them.
Sounds good.
Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for hosting this beautiful show and bringing all these beautiful Black neo-futurists into the space. It's so exciting. I see the work that you are all doing over there and here in Jan, and I am impressed and inspired and a little bit jealous, even though I don't have the time to do the work that you're doing. But I just really, I think the world of your work, and I appreciate you lending your talents to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. I feel so mutual, like that. I remember the first time I ever saw you perform a monologue on the Crane stage when you know, a bunch of alums came and performed after Best Of, and I think I cried because it was just so special to see like a Black male neo-futurist like doing his thing, because I hadn't seen one up to that point yet.
Yeah, I was the only one for a while. So yeah, well, thank you. That's very sweet. I think I'm supposed to tell Morgan to pull me out of the stream.
Okay. All right. So this next segment is going to get steamy. Taking another look back on my life. I am also like a very casual poet. And I decided to pull and read my top 5 horniest poems. I wanted to have sunglasses for this, but I couldn't find them because I just moved. So I thought the glasses would be good because they kind of are like glasses a dad would wear. And you know my history with dads. So I also have some music. This is Alice Coltrane, Journey in Sach e Dandanda. I have never had to say that out loud. This is an album I have put on many times in the past for sexy times. And it felt like good music to put on now. Without further ado, here are my top 5 horniest poems. Number 5. Recently, I learned that my heart is like a peach, big, squishy, sweet, full of good things for you. You can handle it with care, or you can squeeze it. Squeeze it so hard it bruises. Squeeze it so hard it breaks. Crush, sopping, sticking to your hands, filling your nose with a thick, sweet scent, the scent of my love for you. However, and this is crucial, you can't break the seed inside where another heart will grow. Now, I think that one is like pretty horny just because of the peach imagery, like the peach and then it's sticky nectar. It's horny. All right. Number 4. This is a poem I wrote about Janelle Monáe. The future is a black woman in a man's suit, and she gives no fucks about your boner. That imagery just in itself just makes me horny. So that's why it made the top 5. It's short and sweet, and I think it describes it pretty well, if I say so myself. Poem number 3. And then there was this house where we all lived, drafty in all the right places, cozy where it mattered. There was a cat that didn't make me sneeze, bright green eyes, tortoise shell and socks. We make tea, laugh, watch the rain, campaign for the best blanket. They all have dancer's legs, but appreciate my plump softness. We all love one another, but in more ways than one. Now, see, with that one, I wrote that poem after I watched some dancers that I thought were really hot. And I was like, what if we all lived in a house and we just had sex? Poem number 2. I like the shape of you. Rounded corners, joints, muscle. My hand on your back, a pleasing pattern, and a drape of hair that curves above my face. I wrote this one after I had a lot of sex with a Viking. But not an actual Viking, that's his heritage, It was great. And then he drove me to the airport. Now, my number 1 horniest poem. I want to hear Mingus chuckling over his bass as your tongue writes me a sonnet between my thighs. I chose that as number 1 horniest poem because it's the most explicit, obviously, but also I wrote this poem when I wasn't really having a lot of sex. So it was also just, I was truly very, very horny. And that was my top 5 horniest poems. Now I am so excited to feature a reading from a new book called 101 Reasons Not to Breed by Neo-Futurist alum and incredible playwright, screenwriter, jack of all trades, Chisa Hutchinson.
Hello. Okay, so yeah, it's a book that I've been working on called 101 Reasons to Not Breed. It is what it sounds like. And on tonight's theme, I'm going to be sharing the chapters that, are extremely personal because there's some shit that actually happened to me that I now get to look back on with all of you. So buckle up. It was a rough childhood. Okay, 101 Reasons to Not Breed. An Elaborate Deterrent by Chisa Hutchinson. I've dedicated it for my tag team posse of parents. It sure did take a lot of y'all to get it right. A brief forward. Let me just start by saying that I have nothing but the utmost respect for parents. All y'all who are out there putting in the work, rearing responsibly, taking that shit seriously, I see you. I value you. You are literally the saviors of humanity. This book is for the rest of us. Let's not pretend that there aren't people out there who really just should not procreate. You know some. You might be too nice to say it out loud, but you sure as shit know some. Heck, you might know some who already have kids, and that is a true tragedy for all involved. I myself will fully and unapologetically admit that I am one. I am one of those ones who sees what a wide load of a struggle good parenting is. I'm one of those ones who knows from experience as a supplemental parent, standing in as a surrogate for my nephews and niece from the age of 11 on, teaching students going through heavy shit with no support at home, and now trying my best to be a decent stepmom. All these experiences have alerted me to how much goddamn work full-time parenting must be. I stand in full recognition of the enormity of the challenge of child rearing. I'm horrified by the thought of willingly accepting it. Anyone who feels like they've got their life together enough to commit to helping someone else start theirs from actual scratch is a wonder deserving of awe and appreciation. Truly. I do not have my life together. I may never get my life together, but if I ever do, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't want to torpedo the whole hard one thing with a baby. I've come to realize this about myself, and I firmly believe that if more people did, the world would be a better place. If you suspect you might share my conviction, read on. Skipping ahead to reason number 43. If things don't work out with your baby mama or daddy, the kid will always serve as a reminder of that shit. My biological mother used to beat the shit out of me when I was like 2, 3, before she finally gave me up to a family friend who blessedly never laid a hand on me. Like, some of my earliest memories are a pretty awful abuse. Having my head slammed into the edge of a dresser, getting 2 of my baby teeth knocked out of my head, having a hot iron thrown at me. So I've spent a good amount of time trying to piece together some rationale for that wildly irrational shit. One of my theories is that in her hurry to move on after things didn't work out with my father, my mother may have underestimated how painful a reminder it might be to have a tiny person who looked just like him around 24/7. She had run off to a whole other state, Queens, New York, to Jacksonville, North Carolina, with some military man who was basically like my father's diametric opposite, spiritually speaking. That's how she was going to move on. Didn't even bother to tell my father where she was going, despite the fact that she was taking me with her. Her mistake, taking me with her. I'm speculating here because I was, a toddler at the time. That military man didn't really want to be a stepdad, and that having me around was cramping his style. He was abusive to both me and my mother, even after they had a baby of their own together. And my mother didn't really know what to do about that, but like the closest thing she had to a solution was to try to beat the dad out of me. I'm not making excuses for her, and good Lord, please don't dwell on this or get all weird and pitying about it. I can look at this shit from an almost anthropological standpoint now, given how well shit's turned out. But I really do think that the fact that I was 50% dad did a number on her. Nobody wants the literal embodiment of their doomed love hanging around asking for peanut butter sandwiches and shit, Reason number 50. You will compare your parenting style to other parents' parenting styles and come up short. I blame Mr. Casera. Mr. Casera was my 4th grade math teacher at Blessed Sacrament School before it was a charter. A sturdy, middle-aged Filipino man, Mr. Casera did not fuck about. You did not goof off in Mr. Casera's class. You sat straight the fuck up and paid a fucking attention. When he yelled at a student, which he did often, he would point at them with his middle finger. And to this day, I don't know whether that's like just an idiosyncratic Filipino thing or if he really was just like, fuck these kids. But the big thing that I will always remember Mr. Casera for was the ranking. My dude would write the names of all his students up on the blackboard every day in order of GPA. This was before I hit puberty and got stupid, so I was usually number 1. This other kid, a boy named Akil, was chronically number 2. This one time, Mr. Casera wrote a particularly challenging problem on the board for us to solve. After a few moments of feverish figuring, Akil's hand shot up just before mine, and I remember feeling so disappointed that I wasn't going to be the one who got it right away. I wanted that so badly. I did not want to be bumped from my number 1 spot. Akil shared his answer, and in the space before Mr. Casera confirmed that it was correct or incorrect, I swear I felt my heart beating in my bowels. And then, incorrect. Miracle of miracles! My hand shot up. I gave my answer correct. Woo! I heaved a breath like I had just climbed 10 flights of stairs with a belly full of bacon grease. Did a little celebratory dance in my seat. Then I watched as Mr. Casera pointed his middle finger at Akil and said, "And this is why you will always be number 2. Shit. Even in my elation, I could feel how savage that takedown was. But whatever, I was just glad it wasn't me. My spot as top scholar was secure for one more day. And this, mind you, was one math problem in a fourth grade math class. Can you imagine a smug, know-it-all asshole like me having a kid in the decidedly more high-stakes position of having to raise it right? I would need to have all the answers. I would constantly be comparing myself to other parents, trying to figure out if any of them were ahead of me in the ranking, which is bullshit, I know, but knowing that still would stop me from doing it. And plenty of folks know firsthand what I'm talking about. I asked parents if they ever compared their child rearing skills to those of other parents and come up short. Here's what they said.
Oh man, don't even get me started. It doesn't help that my boys yell and disobey and run amok and bite and throw and melt down constantly. So when I look at moms with prim, quiet kids, often girls, sitting nicely, playing solo, snuggled up reading a book, I get crazy jealous and feel like a failure. The worst habit I have is to compare my two boys with my two stepkids and their behavior. Because they share a father, it means that I and my parenting are the isolated variable, right? Trying to train my brain to drop these comparisons as they're not healthy for anyone.
What? Every day. It's a horrible thing to do, and I started on day one with my infant who screamed for a full night straight in the hospital. Our child is not like other people's babies and is not easily satisfied. My therapist, while I was pregnant, told me I was going to have to stop comparing myself as it would eat me up, and she was right.
I did it a lot about potty training because Malik didn't potty train until he turned 4. I felt a lot of shame about it, even though there was nothing I could do about it. I'd see 2-year-olds could use a potty and felt like a failure.
When I see a parent being very kind and patient with their child, I often wonder how I could be kinder and more patient in my parenting. And then structure. When I see parents with great ideas for structuring their kids' activities, I often have a feeling of falling short.
There is a reason I avoid Pinterest. I don't need the mommy guilt. No, my school lunches don't contain food in cute shapes and little notes to my kids.
I often worry about the future and not being able to finance better options for my kiddo. I often think about some of the benefits I had as a child and wonder how G will do without, like going to camp in the summer, private school, dance classes, voice lessons, etc.
I often feel like I'd be better able to parent if I had more money.
All the time. However, I've also come across some bloody horrendous parents who seem to have had kids for the sole purpose of, in their mind, lording it over us poor sods about how their precious Phoebe can split the atom and darling Hercules is getting the lead in the school play before he even has got out of his nappies. Meanwhile, my kids were irrigating their left nostrils and flicking across the table. Having kids is not a competitive sport, but not everyone sees it that way.
Apparently true even when your only competition is yourself. Even if you're that rare breed who doesn't feel the need to compare yourself to other parents, you might run up against something like this.
My boys are fire and ice. Eldest child, 14 years, is the coolest cucumber. Slow to anger, can make his own fun, but can be very insular. There's never an action without a thought. From day one, he's always been that way. Baby boy, 1.9 years, is a passionate spirit. He's decisive and argumentative and reacts immediately to things or people based on how he feels about them in that moment. From day one, he's always been that way. I had to get over comparing myself to myself. This second time around is nothing like the first time, and it's made me question myself a lot. I've been trying to figure out how much of eldest child's easygoing personality I was mistaking for good parenting. What people, including myself, considered good manners was actually naturally just his way. With baby boy, I have to remember to pour into him the same ideals, knowing that he'll receive them differently and react to them differently. That doesn't make my parenting bad. I didn't do it better the first time. I just have a different kind of child this time. But man, this baby ain't giving out best mom in the world ribbons just for showing up. crying emoji.
I have compared the mother that parents my daughter to the mother that parents my son. My daughter's mother comes up short. I need to work on balancing that.
I have 5, and they're all very different from each other. Same household, same parents, same rules. With that middle child of mine, facepalm emoji, crying emoji. It's funny though. When I speak to parents with perfect, in my mind, children, they are quick to tell me how stressful their kids can be. Then I realize how well behaved my kids are and that I should stop worrying. Winky face with the tongue out emoji. I think we always believe the grass is greener somewhere else, even in parenting. Shrug emoji.
When you feel you may be falling behind on such an important test, it's hard to keep your eyes on your own work. And good Lord, even then, how do you reconcile the parent you are when you're relaxed with the one you are when you're stressed? The parent you are pre-divorce with the one you are post-divorce? The parent you are to your infant with the parent you are to your teenager? The parent you are to your first child with the one you are with your last, etc., and so much, etc. Reason number 52. Others won't recognize your kid's talents, strengths, or potential. Story time. I already told you that I got stupid once puberty hit, but I was still smart enough apparently to land a scholarship to a swanky private school when I was 14. Thanks, Seeds. And in order to attend said private school, I had to move in with the host family, which for those of you who are counting is my third family after the biologicals and the woman my blood mother gave me to. While I may have been one of the smartest kids in my North schools, I was definitely one of the dumbest at Kent Place. I struggled in so many subjects, science, math, and horror of horrors, even English, the one subject over which I had always geeked out so hard. Sophomore year was particularly hard as there was a focus on the classics, which meant Chaucer and Austen and Forster. Oh my. I know that there are people out there who see those names and cream a little, but that 15-year-old Black girl from Newark, New Jersey may as well have been reading a phone book. Same emotional impact. I remember very vividly the time the teacher, Dr. Kidner, told me in front of the whole class, "You're never going to get it if you don't get over your fear of the classics." If I knew then what I know now, I would have told her that fear was far from what I was feeling. Anyway, I got a D+ in her class. Yeah, it was that much of a struggle. Oddly, though, with what many might justifiably call affirmative action voodoo, but what I'm sure was just some fierce advocacy from my host mom, Dr. Kristen Peck, and my next English teacher, Dr. Jane Cole, I got placed in AP English the following year. It was a different kind of struggle because Dr. Cole did not play. But Dr. Cole also didn't make me feel like a bucket of hot liquid shit for not being into medieval lit. Like, y'all, I got to read The Bluest Eye in her class. And once that happened, once I got to read something that I could connect to on a human level, which, you know, is the point of literature, I was free to hone the skills. I could recognize an extended metaphor, a status detail, an incidence of synesthesia, the importance of typography, all that shit. She even managed to get me into some classics. The Great Gatsby is still one of my favorite books. A dude trying like hell to distance himself from humble beginnings to fit in with higher society and shit not working out so well for him. Relatable. Dr. Cole even specially assigned me a poem that was not on the pre-approved designated list of poems to explicate for a major assignment, June Jordan's poem about my rights. It was the first A I earned on a paper at that school. And out of all 3 AP classes I took, Latin, history, and English, Dr. Cole's was the only one that snagged me a college credit. Cut to Vassar College where I did undergrad. I'm still licking my wounds and feeling dumb until one English professor, apparently impressed with my performance in class, pulls me aside and asks if I'd consider becoming a tutor. Evidently, the training stuck. Imagine that, going to school, not to show off what you already know, but to learn some shit. Who knew that was possible? Apparently, Dr. Cole did. And my host mom, both of whom saw something in me that wasn't readily evident given my grades. But it makes me wonder where I'd be if they hadn't. If it were my mom, my second mother, with her 6th grade education, insane work schedule, and low sense of entitlement tasked with advocating for my opportunities. I also wonder how effective I could possibly be at wrangling opportunities for a kid of my own. Like, am I even capable of paying the kind of attention that would lead me to see when my kid's potential wasn't being nurtured? Me, who forgets to water my plants with any kind of regularity. Ask yourself, am I willing to bet someone else's very future on my ability to recognize when they need more support? And then, am I resourceful enough and demanding enough to go after that support? Reason number 74, because what if they only wind up inheriting your worst traits? You already know I'm not the closest with my biological mother. We mostly just pop up on each other's Facebook pages on birthdays or whatever these days. All good, all pleasant, not particularly deep. But there was one moment when I felt profoundly sympathetic toward her. Nearly 10 years ago, I got this message from her in my inbox.
Hey, boo boo, please give me a call as soon as you can at 678-555-6215. It is a matter of importance. Mom.
If Michelle Obama had dropped that into my DMs, I could not have been more surprised. I had never, ever gotten such a request from this woman. I called immediately. She told me about a letter she received from the US government basically owning up to the fact that it had allowed a metal refinery to dump toxic waste into the water supply of a military base where I lived with her as a toddler. Waste that caused a whole lot of sickness and death, including, in all likelihood, my mother's multiple sclerosis as well as my own. The legalities of this shit are enough for a fucking Netflix miniseries, one of the infuriating ones though, because everyone affected is still waiting on justice. But I'm not going to get into that here. Instead, I want to draw your attention to this addendum from my mother.
Oh, baby. In a way, this is a relief. Here I was thinking that, after everything else, this disease was all I had to give to you. But it wasn't me. For once, it wasn't me.
Y'all, this woman's guilt runs gene deep, and that makes me feel some kind of way. Can you imagine watching the things you detest most about yourself, the things that hold you back or plague you the hardest, manifest in your child? It's particularly distressing thought for people with a family history of mental illness or genetic disorders. Things like,
My dad gave me varicose veins. Totally benign for 70 years. Then tried to kill me. Blood clots. I unwittingly passed polycystic kidney disease to my younger daughter, who nearly died of it 3 times before 30.
Diabetes. Impatience with idiots. Was that out loud? Defensiveness, which is more a reaction to dad's trait of putting me down and using physical abuse.
Constant criticism. For me, it's mostly in my head, criticizing self. Nothing is ever done or enough.
Judgmental thoughts. I judge myself more than others, but I judge them too. I'm working on it. Anxiety. One parent has anxiety and has done nothing about it, and I learned it and then some. Still resentful about that. Working on that too. Metabolism. I come from a long line of round women. It's BS. Also thinning hair from both sides. Grudges. We hold them and are really bad at forgiveness.
Anxiety and depression from my mama.
I have anxiety. Working in property and casualty insurance made it worse because you're basically studying risk and seeing those what are the odds? Scary as hell claims occur every day.
Aversion to paying bills on time, dad. Obsessive record keeping, mom.
My mom's temper.
Temper. I'm a yeller. My mom was a yeller, and now my daughter is a yeller.
Fucked up hairline, issues with food, shitty eyesight.
My teeth. God, my family has such surreally awful teeth. My kid had 3 oral surgeries before he turned 1, and his teeth are still growing with an overbite.
and sometimes it's just like,
Man boobs.
reason number 92, they won't leave. I already mentioned that I moved in with a host family to attend private school as a scholarship kid when I was 14. What I haven't mentioned is my ma, the woman my blood mother gave me to, was actively campaigning against that move. Like, she really did not want me to go. Like, to the point where it looked like when all the time I spent studying with my placement program, C's, was actually going to result in a scholarship somewhere, she hid my acceptance letters and all other pertinent correspondence. I found it all a couple years later, tucked away in a basket of yarn in her nightstand. If it weren't for my 8th grade guidance counselor casually congratulating me on my scholarship to Kent Place in the hall at school, I would have just assumed that I'd been rejected and taken the L. But nope, it was Mom intercepting, interfering, refusing to let go. We never talked about it because I always kind of knew why she did it, which was not just because I was the cheapest, most reliable babysitter she had for the foster babies, because I sometimes joke. The closest we ever came to touching on a reason was during a phone call I made from my mom, from my host fam's house, when she said, "I don't know why you felt like you had to leave to succeed." She had taken me in, worked sometimes 3 jobs to make sure I had a home and food. My leaving, when and how I did, must have felt like such a betrayal. Like I was just tossing all that back at her like a fucking grenade of ingratitude. I didn't leave at 18 or 22. I didn't move out because I got married and was going to live with my partner. I moved out at 14 specifically because I needed more than she could give me. I moved out because opportunities at home were limited. I moved out because every generous and loving thing that she had done for me wasn't enough to secure me a stable future. And that had to be a kick in the teeth. I imagine that even under the best or most conventional circumstances, watching your child leave the nest is fucking hard. If you're a good parent who's given them all you could, you're screwed either way. Scenario 1, all you've given is enough for them to equip them with the confidence and skills they need to go out and function in the world, and that's exactly what they do, leaving you with a big yawning hole where your chief source of purpose used to be. Or scenario 2, it's not enough, and you feel about as inadequate as I'm thinking my mom must have. Then the kid's gotta hustle to compensate for the disadvantage and succeeds against the odds. And ain't that a bittersweet victory? Of course, there's always the alternative to all of this. Reason number 93, they may never leave. I tried using my empathy cap for this, but it malfunctioned, y'all. So I guess I'm just gonna keep right on not understanding why a person would not do everything within their power to establish a space of their own. This, like bringing children on airplanes, is just one of those things I can't help judging. And I don't want to hear shit about how hard it is to find a job in the current market and wham, wham, wham. I struck out on my own right out of undergrad with barely an internet at my disposal. Like emailed applications were not a thing back then, and I had to actually send hard copies of resumes via the U.S. postal system, motherfuckers. And my Black female dreadlock having ethnically named theater major ass has managed to stay regularly employed ever since. And I was not always happy with my job, I assure you. But I like indoor living with all this trappings, electricity and plumbing and whatnot, so I did what I had to do. Who are these people who are totally cool with living in their parents' basement at age 25, 35, 55? Like, what's the missing ingredient? Is there a mechanism they're lacking? Because whoever can figure out how to create a synthetic one would make a fucking killing. Picture the commercial for that shit.
Has your kid lost their mojo? Do they spend half their time moping in their room and the other half blaming you for their lack of initiative? Are they basically human cancer, feeding off nearby healthy cells? It sounds like they need the Moxie Max patch. Their independence is achievable and your sanity salvageable with this specially designed, easy-to-use system. Just apply the patch and observe the immediate increase in your kid's personal ambition. No extrinsic motivation required. The key is a carefully balanced, non-addictive hormonal compound that works to stimulate the prefrontal cortex, which controls motivation. Within minutes, your kid will be ready to take on the world.
That shit would be tight. But right now, that shit is but a dream. So it is entirely too possible that your grown-ass child will wind up a vortex of impotence, sucking away all your hopes for a future without dependence and your toilet paper, leaving nothing behind but a whiff of weed smoke.
Thank you so much, Chisa. That was amazing. When does the full book come out?
Oh, who knows? Who knows? Still working on it. I got to go.
Yeah, it's been so cool to watch you, gather all of these stories from people and to hear your stories combined. It's like I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, so excited for our next person coming up now. She really needs some introduction because you will love her as soon as you meet her. Here comes Ashley Braffington.
I think the blackest I've ever been was when I was in my mother's belly. Everything was black in there. Black is the color. In the dictionary that I write for you, black will be defined as first, primary. Who thinks black girls are delicious? Agreed. I agree. My artistic life has been one consistent push towards self-acceptance, self-allowing, self-existing, self-creating, self-love, self. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ashley Denise Brockington, and I am a colored girl, Negro, African-American pansexual. I am either heteroflexible or homoflexible. I used to be a fag hag, but I don't think we have those anymore. I'm attracted to gay men, gayish men, liberated men, men who can take a dick, and women. Why am I a performance artist? Why? But why? I've been grappling with this since the get. Grappling. It's like I won't let myself be an artist unless I have a really good reason. Black Ashley, lighten up. Lighten up, Black Ash. I think through my performance, I'm trying to get into, be the truth for myself. And for anyone else that may be in the room. Anyone else who may be feeling a little less than. A little less than, despite evidence that she is pure diva. Girlhood. I can think of the first time I got kicked out of the girls' dressing room for being mistaken as a boy. Ouch! Over and over again. Ouch! Over and over again. Ouch! Tears every time. Looking up at my dad. Oh, the tears welling up. I came of age as a strong Black woman in the whitest place on earth. A well-brought-up child in a well-brought-up neighborhood. Zip code 1 white 00 a white. And I remember that day that I separated my sex from my Blackness. 1984, 6th grade, Black History Month. Oh, I hated Black History Month. But I loved Katie Anderson. She was Black, Irish, snow white skin, fair, long black hair, like a Disney princess. You know, that effortless Disney princess look? Katie had that. And she was a vegetarian. She was my first vegetarian. Katie, you remember that day in history class? And they were showing us movies of Black people getting eaten by dogs and stuff. And you were so sensitive to my feelings that day, Katie. I remember feeling your hot breath on the back of my neck as you sighed. Poor Ashley. White patronization is so fucking sexy. Patronize me, Katie. Patronize me, Katie. Oh, Black History Month. Surrounded by misrepresentations of love, beauty, womanhood, teenage passion, I was that lone Black nappy-headed child sitting in the front, I always knew the answer. High school. I give myself to anyone who gives me the least bit of attention. I only got raped once, which I think is below the national average for a black girl, so winning. Cut to the Mecca. Howard University, 1989. Walking, stalking in my big black boots, living off the earth, eating herbs and fruits. I was supposed to fall in love with my blackness there. I was supposed to become a revolutionary there. It was 1989, and I was 17 years old, fresh out the house, and living in Chocolate City. Perfect. Living off campus, a check. Light-skinned, bad poetry writing, pseudo-revolutionary boyfriend, a check. 1,000 micro braids with red, black, and green beads, check, 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 check. I wanted to love Howard like Ta-Nehisi Coates in Between the World and Me. I wanted to see myself reflected in the colors on the yard. It didn't happen that way for me. My barefoot, bindi smoking ass didn't fit in Howard. I wasn't cool in Howard. I might have been cool in the fine arts department where I belonged, but I chickened out and I switched to French literature. Silver lining. Best good sex of my life. First good sex of my life. Thank you, pseudo-black revolutionary. Thank you for teaching me about 40s, blunts, and female ejaculation. I wanted Howard to be it, but it wasn't. Now what? It's 1994, and I have officially tuned in and dropped out. Spending roughly $1,500 a year traveling the world, I was fucking liberated. A typical day meant waiting on the side of the highway for hours and hours for a ride to wherever and writing all day in a cafe. I was a travel snob, and I wouldn't go anywhere unless I could hitchhike. American highways, European highways, didn't matter. And yes, you could thumb a ride on a 747. It's called Air Hitch. And yes, I did. I was constantly falling in love. Lots of drinking in the park, lots of living in the park, lots of fucking in the park. I was 100% free of responsibility. Responsibility was for capitalists, and I was a bohemian. Actually living in Bohemia, which is the western half of the Czech Republic. How did I make my money, you ask? I identified as a witch, and a witch always had her cards. I could make enough money for dinner reading cards. In a single afternoon, I rocked the box at the coolest clubs in Prague, babysat for American drug dealers, and my faggot husband was the cutest bottom on rentboy.com. We had it made in the shade. Never coming to a theater near you. Existing only in my memory, a simpler time when we used paper maps to travel and strange phone numbers on a matchbook actually turned into a place to sleep. Mwah, tikuza, nazdraví. Dear Stink. I'm like little Ashley, she's called Stink. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with the way you look. It's just that a long time ago, the people who look like you were moved from one place where everyone looked like them to another place where almost everyone had lighter skin. And that can make a person not understand who they really are. Schism. It can cause a person to lose sight of the fact that each person has value. No worries, no worries, no worries. Because now, finally now, I am my own a magical Negro.
Ashley! Yes! What'd I tell you? I met Ashley Brockington in 2015, and I loved her from minute one. So I'm so glad that you know her now, too, if you didn't already. Now, once again, Greg LeCon. Play the clip.
Oh, God. I'm taking shot after shot after shot after shot. Drunk Regulus in the booth. Let's get it. I'm a fucking piece of shit and I'm proud. I'm the mood of a cow. I just had me a threesome with backwoods and some loud. And to be honest, I really shouldn't be walking around. I just came from the hospital cause I got me the gout. About to watch me a porn and jack off all over the couch. Wanna go to the park but now I'm no longer allowed. Accidentally send some nudes to your kid through the cloud. Trying to hit up a hooker and then go feast on some chow. Pass me the rum ham. Pass me the rum ham, nigga. Pass me the rum ham. Okay. Name is Frank Reynolds. I do not do the right thing, so you do not call me Mookie. Nigga rocking some Gucci, but also covered in dookie. And the bitches, they love it, they love the smell of the poopy. And at the end of the day, these groupies, they really ain't choosy. Make her fart in my face whenever she's shaking her booty. And I'm not eating the coochie unless it's tangy and fruity. I ain't squeezing your titties unless they lanky and droopy. Never wearing a rubber, hope you're okay with my cooties, bitch. Pass me the rum ham. Pass me the rum ham, nigga. Pass me the rum ham. My name is Frank Reynolds. I'm a fun man. I really need to rock a piss. Never wipe my ass whenever I take a shit. Fuck brushing my teeth, I'll eat some mouthwash strips. Got swag, a big dick and 3 whole nips. Yellow pigmentation up on my toenail clips. Schmegma on my dick tip, armpits on drip. If you like to take showers, then you're forfeits, bitch. Pepperoni dog fart, my favorite flavor of chip. Got some nitrates in a can, bout to take me a rip. So clever, I'm coming through with hilarious quips. Might be fucking disgusting, but I can fuck your bitch. And that's the end of the 5th track. It's done. That's it. Bye now.
Thanks so much for watching tonight. So, we looked back. We did it. We learned about ourselves. We learned about each other. We learned about opera singers. What can you look back on in your life? Got any old letters sitting in a shoebox? A grandparent who's still alive and full of stories? An old Gmail account that you never deleted and you've forgotten about? Take care of yourself if it's a bad dig, of course, but if you can brave it, maybe you'll learn something about yourself that you forgot. I want to take a moment to thank all the performers, Katie, Greg, Chisa, Kevin, Ashley. Thank you so much to the team behind the scenes. Kevin, the brains of the operation, but then the team that makes it happen, Morgan, Joey, Zoe, and Erez. Thank you so much. Please Venmo reparations to @FrigidNewYork. Put reparations in the memo line if you enjoyed this show and you want to pay reparations. Please tune in next week. The host will be Christina Pitter. Take care and pay it forward.